Why do we love football? What captivates us to continually watch this sport over and over? Simple answer: the storylines. The last second goals like Dini in the playoffs, the controversies like Chelsea versus Barcelona, the underdogs like Wigan versus Manchester City. We love this sport because of the humanity, the chaos of it all. So it completely baffles me as to why so many people don't like international football. The African Cup of Nations, or AFCON, encapsulates everything that we love about this sport. Drama, controversies, underdogs. Not only does this tournament have those things, but they also have something that the Euros and even the World Cup doesn't have. Literal plumbers playing and beating people like Riyad Mahrez. Seriously, this dude was studying a BAFA certificate, whatever the hell that is, and is a semi-pro player in the third tier of France. Now, is the quality better at AFCON compared to the Euros or the World Cup? Well, you tell me. However, I think that that's what makes the tournament even better, because anything can happen at any given time. So today, we're here to talk about why AFCON is the most entertaining tournament, club or country, in the entire world of football. Now, we're going to use this past AFCON tournament as the case study, and we're going to be starting with the qualifiers. With 54 countries in Africa and only 48 of them being allowed to join the qualifiers, the bottom 12 countries are randomly selected against each other for a two-legged preliminary round. How are the rankings determined for these countries, you might ask? By using the FIFA World Rankings, because they are obviously always correct and should always be taken seriously. These were the countries that qualified from the qualifiers, and all of them actually did very well at being bad. They got rocked in their groups. Especially Sao Tome and Principe, who shipped 16 goals to Nigeria and ended with a negative 23 goal difference. The only country that actually did do well from the preliminary round was the Gambia. After just 3 points from their first 3 matches, they managed to beat the group winners Mali with a 79th minute goal. They then beat South Sudan 2-3 with a 96th minute goal after conceding in the 91st minute. And then they drew Congo 2-2 with 2 late goals, including one of them in the 90th minute, in order to qualify for AFCON. Keep in mind that Congo was actually fighting for that second qualifying spot, so even though the Gambia only drew, that goal kept them from being eliminated. They managed all of this after barely beating out Chad 3-2 in the preliminary round, which, by the way, they won with a 92nd minute goal. The real tournament hasn't even started, and we have one of the best stories in all of AFCON. The Gambia really do have gumption. The Gambian gumption, that's what we're calling them. As for the rest of the qualifiers, there weren't too many major upsets. Everyone from Pot 1 qualified, and only one country from Pot 4 qualified, which was Tanzania. However, the highest ranked country to not qualify, Gabon, lost on the final day against Mauritania, the country it was competing against for the second qualifying spot. In the end, these were the countries that qualified and ended up producing some of the best football moments of the entire year. And it's only February, my god. Moving on to the actual AFCON tournament, 24 countries from the qualifying round are put into 6 different groups, where the top 2 automatically advance to the knockout stage, and a few third-place countries make up the last 4 spots in the knockouts. Similar to the qualifying round, the draw for AFCON puts the countries in 4 different pots according to their FIFA World Rankings, because again, they are always correct and should always be taken seriously. Taking a page out of FIFA's playbook and waiting a full hour for the actual draw, these are what the groups looked like. Note that even though the Ivory Coast is not in the top 6 countries, they were put into Pot 1 since they were the hosts. Now, to give you a better idea of the strength of each group, I put each country's respective ranking next to their name, with the first being their African ranking and the second being their world ranking. With these rankings, 3 groups stand out. 2 groups, being Group C and Group E, looked insanely difficult. In Group C, you got Senegal and Cameroon, 2 World Cup squads and the 2021 reigning AFCON winners in Senegal. And in Group E, you have Tunisia, another World Cup squad who beat France, and Mali, who did not make the World Cup only because they lost to Tunisia. As for the other group, Group D looks like Manchester City in the Champions League. Algeria won AFCON in 2019 and were put into the easiest group in the entire tournament. Every group had at least 3 countries in the top 20 of Africa, or at least 3 countries in the top 100 of the world. So, you know, Algeria should walk the group. Match day 1 finally arrives, and it's a relatively calm start with 3 red cards, 4 match-deciding goals scored past the 88th minute, and a horde of insane goals that makes FIFA look realistic. Let's begin. The first notable match was Egypt versus Mozambique, where these countries drew 2-2 after 2 goals in 3 minutes from Mozambique and Salah scoring a 96th minute penalty to equalize. On the same day and in the same group, Cape Verde beat Ghana 2-1 with a 91st minute goal. Keep in mind, this was the literal second day of the tournament. We also saw Angola, one of the lowest ranked countries in the entire tournament, draw 2019 AFCON winners Algeria 1-1 while also out XGing them. Guinea drew Cameroon after scoring this goal. Jesus Christ, FIFA did get it right with the 2 tackle tax. Fair enough. Burkina Faso took down Mauritania 1-0 with a 96-minute penalty. Namibia deservedly beat Tunisia with an 88th minute header, and the final match ended in a 1-1 draw between Zambia and DR Congo. Now that's a pretty tame way to end the first match day, right? A 1-1 draw. Well, Zambia's goal came from the DR Congo keeper rushing out, flattening an attacker with no foul called, a Zambian player lobbing the ball over most of the DR Congo's defense, and a defender doing his best Harry Maguire impression to let the ball in. All of this happened in 4 days. You cannot genuinely tell me that any other tournament is as entertaining as AFCON, and we are just getting started. The second match day was actually significantly less hectic than the first, but you know, it's AFCON, so that's not really saying much, is it? Angola carried on from their good performance against Algeria to beat Mauritania 3-2, although shout out to the Mauritanian Koita who made the commentator tingle with this thunderbolt. And right now, I am tingling. Cape Verde destroyed Mozambique 3-0 with some absolute bangers themselves, 2 piss missiles from New Jersey. Seriously, are you seeing this right now? Algeria needed a 95th minute goal to draw Burkina Faso 2-2 in order to keep their knockout hopes alive, and Dhaka stole a point for 10-man Zambia with an 88th minute equalizer against Tanzania. Even with fewer dramatics and fewer red cards, AFCON provided a lot of entertainment on the second match day based on the goals that were scored. You know, the 2010 World Cup in South Africa had bangers too. Does Africa just give players like better long shot ability or something? Now the final match day is always the best because you have the best opportunity to see random things occur. Remember this World Cup group and how Japan and Costa Rica were on top for like 3 minutes? That's what the final match day brings. These were the standings before the last group stage match. Senegal and Cape Verde had secured knockout places, while Mali, Angola, Burkina Faso, Guinea, Morocco, Equatorial Guinea, and Nigeria were virtually guaranteed a spot as well. That meant 7 spots were left to fight for, and remember, 4 of the 6 third-place countries qualify for the knockouts, so a lot of small countries still had a fighting chance, while some big countries were left to answer questions, like Algeria, for example. Remember how we said Algeria were in the easiest group? Well, 2 disappointing draws later sees them only have 2 points and actually be in 3rd place. Now, they do play the last team in their group, so they should win that pretty easily.
Algeria are eliminated.
So the 2019 AFCON winners not only got grouped, but got last place, while one of the lowest ranked countries in the entire tournament, Angola, beat Burkina Faso 2-0 to top the group. I guess you could say that Group D stood for the group of death for Algeria. Now just real quick, I'm going to try to get the boring groups out of the way. Group E had literally no goals scored on the final day, so the standings were made the same. No shocking drama here, except for Tunisia, the 3rd best African country, crashing out dead last. They beat France like a year ago, and now they can't score against South Africa. That's AFCON. Morocco scored the only goal in Group F to beat Zambia and stay in 1st, while DR Congo crushed any hope of Tanzania making the knockouts by holding them to 0 shots on target and a 0-0 draw, meaning the standings in this group also remain the same. Alright, so I finished the boring groups. I made that amazing joke about Group D being the group of death for Algeria. Now we just have the first 3 groups. Okay. Ugh. Let's get weird. In Group B, Cape Verde already secured a 1st place finish, so they rotated a lot for their match against Egypt. Egypt, however, didn't have their golden boy Salah because of an injury, making this a far more interesting matchup. To guarantee a spot in the knockouts, Egypt had to win this match, and with the score level 1-1 in the 93rd minute, Mohamed performed one of the cheekiest chips, a true dinky dinky, to put his country up 2-1. Was this the hand of God? No. It was the arm of Mohamed. Egypt secured qualification into the—
Just ended Egypt's chances.
Okay, so another late goal. I cannot keep up. This result means Ghana or Mozambique have to win their match in order to qualify for the knockouts. A draw will see them both eliminated. Ghana go up 2-0 with 2 penalties and are cruising to a victory, but not before a third penalty of the match is given to Mozambique. Ghana has to hold on for just 5 more minutes, and then— why am I even talking? We all know where this is headed. Ghana's keeper makes one of the worst mistakes I've ever seen and touches the ball while it's going out to cause a corner. There's no need to touch the ball here. Just none, and the mistake directly leads to a goal. The funniest thing about this is that Ronaldo and a lot of the Mozambique squad celebrate the goal even though they're still out with this result. We then had Group A finishing with a lot of chaos, not because of the matches though. The chaos came from the Ivory Coast firing their manager after the loss, but then qualifying for the knockouts anyway. Lastly, we're finishing with Group C and our boys with the Gambian gumption. The Gambia faced Cameroon and both countries needed a win in order to reach the knockout stage. After no goals were scored in the first half, Cameroon broke the deadlock in the 56th minute, but we know our boys from the Gambia are not going down without a fight. 2 goals scored from the Gambia in the 72nd and the 85th minute, the first goals for them in the entire tournament, saw them take the lead late on. They're gonna blow it, aren't they?
Chato delivers. Oh, turned in. They need a winner. It might come here.
The Gambia squad were Gambia'd themselves and unfortunately were knocked out with no points at all. But maybe, just maybe, it was about the friends we made along the way. Although maybe one point would have been nice. So the final groups looked like this, with again the top 2 teams in each group going through and the top 4 of the 6 third place teams going through as well. That means Namibia, Mauritania, Cameroon, and the manager-less Ivory Coast scraped into the knockouts while in third place. The round of 16 matchups looked like this, and if you thought the group stages were wild, well then you're just a little dumb stupid head who hasn't learned what AFCON is about. These next few matches will show you why it's the best tournament in the world. Now let's start with the boring matches. Nigeria beat Cameroon 2-0, while Mali defeated Burkina Faso 2-1. That's it. Those were the only boring matches in the round of 16 because these were the only ones without a red card, a shootout, a late game-winning goal, or a top country bowing out. The other 6 matches had at least one of those things, including the matchup to determine who's the better Guinea between Equatorial Guinea and Guinea. I've said Guinea so much it has now lost all meaning. In the first half, there was nothing. Then the second half came to life after a literal kick to the chest that would make Nigel de Jong proud and make Bayo fear for his life. Look at his eyes. He lost a piece of his soul. Equatorial Guinea would eventually get a penalty, but clang it off the post, leaving Bayo and Guinea to snatch victory with literally 20 seconds left in the match. Only AFCON can make a 1-0 game extremely entertaining, and speaking of 1-0 games, Cape Verde scored with an 88th minute penalty to beat Mauritania. Just as a side note, can we get more commentators like this, please?
Long range shot, it's a good shot. It's there. Can he get a shot in? Oh, trying to thread the ball through. There's no shot.
There were also 2 matches that went into a shootout, Egypt versus the DR Congo and Senegal versus the Ivory Coast. While both games ended 1-1 after 120 minutes, they also had dramatic events occur. The Ivory Coast, again with no manager, scored with an 86-minute penalty to equalize and eventually bring the match to a shootout. Ivory Coast would be perfect with all 5 of their penalties to knock out the reigning champion Senegal. In the other match, a late 97th minute red card would force Salah-less Egypt to lock the game down and force a shootout. Mohamed, the Egyptian who scored a penalty earlier in the match, placed his wide and hit the post, but Masuaku just, felt so bad for him that he missed his penalty in solidarity. Eventually, it goes to the 7th shooters, the goalkeepers for some reason, and the Egyptian keeper, Gabal, dinked the crossbar while Mpasi slotted his away, giving DR Congo the victory. This was an amazing knockout round of matches, and oh wait, yeah, we still have 2 other ones to cover. The biggest upset in the entire tournament saw World Cup semi-finalists Morocco lose to South Africa 2-0. Everything came together for them in this match. Williams, the South African keeper, had a great performance and a great tournament thus far. Hakimi missed an opportunity to equalize with a late penalty in the match, and Mokoena had a perfect free kick to seal the victory. And now we're moving on to Angola versus Namibia, arguably the most chaotic match in the round of 16 and the tournament to this point. Let's start with the fact that these are 2 of the 4 worst countries in the entire tournament, and not only did they make it out of the group stage, they are playing each other too. Chaos arrives early in the match with the Angolan keeper handling the ball outside of the box and receives a red card. So naturally, Angola goes to take the lead in the 38th minute despite being a man down. 2 minutes later, Namibia also goes down to 10 men because of a second yellow card, even though the Angolan attacker trips himself. I mean, maybe there's a tiny bit of contact, but that is in no way a second yellow, meaning that VAR cannot intervene and it stays on the field. 2 minutes after all of that, the ensuing free kick from the foul led to Angola doubling their lead. So within 4 minutes, Angola took the lead, Namibia had a man wrongly sent off, and then Angola scored a second. This is what I mean by the most chaotic match. Now, just to add a little cherry on top for how insane this tournament has been so far, let's take a look at the quarterfinal matchups. Now, I want you to notice that only 3 of the top 10 African countries are in the quarterfinals, and no one from the top 5 are in it. In fact, there are just as many countries from Pot 1 and Pot 2 as there are from Pot 3 and Pot 4. Just another example of showing why the FIFA rankings are always correct and should always be taken seriously. Now, at this point in the tournament, we have to wonder if this is the best of what AFCON has to show. I mean, surely there can't be any more chaos or bedlam or just random things happening, right? Ah, see, there you go. A quiet 1-0 win for Nigeria over Angola, which at least makes sense. Nigeria haven't conceded a goal since the 36th minute of their opening match, and they are a bit stronger than Angola on paper. Honestly, it's kind of nice to see a match that's not absolutely insane. It gives us a chance to catch our breath a bit and just oh man, that is high scoring, but okay, all right, that's fine. No red cards or any late dramatic.
Oh, he's made 3 consecutive saves in the shootout.
If I do, okay, all right, let's go over the shootout first because the Ivory Coast Mali game will end me. Williams shows his heroics for South Africa once again and saves not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 penalties to send South Africa through. Now, as for South Africa, whoever missed their penalties should be buying Williams dinner because there is no way that he should have to save 4 penalties to send his team through. All right, so you remember when I said the Angola versus Namibia match was the most chaotic? While that was true at the time, it pales in comparison to the Ivory Coast Mali game, so just deep breath here. Here we go. We have some early action when Kasunu literally rolls over onto Sinayoko and gives a penalty. He seems confused at how it's a penalty, but I'm personally confused at his confusion. Adama Traore, different Adama Traore, sees his penalty saved and the score remains goalless. We're then back at it with the red cards when Kasunu gets a second yellow in the 43rd minute for tripping up the attacker on a breakaway. Definitely not his best game, and his apology acknowledges that. We move on to the 71st minute when a Jubilani ball makes its way onto the field and allows Nene Dorgeles to fire a banger upper 90 to put Mali up 1-0. The Ivory Coast have to respond, and in typical AFCON fashion, they wait until the last minute to do so and score in the 90th minute. Why are there only 6 Mali players back to defend a 1-goal advantage so late in the match? AFCON, that's why. In the 108th minute, Dorgeles puts in a wonderful ball and no one attacks it, but the Ivorian defense nearly puts it in for them. And then in the 122nd minute of extra time, already past the 1 minute of added time, Fofana's volley goes past every player except his teammate, who redirects it in for a game-winning goal with no time remaining. Just when you think the pandemonium is finished, the ref calls for full time and all hell breaks loose. The Ivorian players run onto the pitch, some go to celebrate with the fans. Mali players surround the ref and even push him, which results in a red card for an eliminated country after the match was finished. And the crowd could not be louder during all of this because the Ivory Coast is hosting the tournament in the first place. This ending was so chaotic that the commentators were talking over each other and you couldn't even understand what they were saying. I love AFCON so much. The semifinals seemed a lot less dramatic, at least for the Ivory Coast, who dispatched DR Congo and won 1-0 to make the finals. While the match itself didn't see that much drama, the fact that the Ivory Coast is in the final to begin with, after getting beat 4-0 in the final group stage match and then firing their manager because they didn't think they qualified, is one of the stories of the tournament, you know, along with the other 83 stories of the tournament. As for Nigeria versus South Africa, well, we all know that Nigeria has one of the best defenses in the tournament thus far, and so when they went up 1-0 in the 67th to take the lead, it was pretty much over. So I think I jinxed Nigeria with that one. That's my bad. But thankfully, my jinxing power isn't that strong, as Nigeria went on to beat South Africa in a shootout. But if you want someone to be mad at, blame Mackwell, the king of jinxes, who said South Africa would win the shootout. So it's come down to this. Yes, my outfit's changed. It's been a long video, okay? A final between the host country, Ivory Coast, and the Super Eagles of Nigeria. This game turned into a storybook ending and a Cinderella story all in one. Nigeria took the lead in the 38th minute with a goal that was actually against the run of play. However, Ivory Coast score in a similar fashion from a set piece in the 62nd minute to level the match. But here's where the storybook ending takes place. Hilaire, a man who was diagnosed with cancer in July of 2022, was the man to give Ivory Coast the lead in the 81st minute and eventually give them the unlikeliest of wins. Ivory Coast became the champions of Africa despite every setback imaginable. Although I think we knew Nigeria was going to lose because, again, the Mackwell jinx. So that wraps up AFCON. Again, a tournament that, in my opinion, is the most entertaining in the entire world of football. Now, hopefully this encourages you all to go look at some international tournaments because the Asia Cup was actually happening at the exact same time, and they had great matches and great moments as well. So don't think even for a second that if international break is happening, that there's nothing to watch, because if you look hard enough, there are absolutely some things worth watching. So like I said, that is going to do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Peace.